Hey folks, a few days ago I managed to get the world record for level 10 to 50 speed leveling. I uploaded the footage of the run to YouTube, and while the entire thing is up on my channel, it's pretty lengthy. I know a lot of people want to learn how to optimize their leveling speed when making new alts, but not everybody wants to sit through a 6-hour video. This is why I've decided to make this video, which is a detailed overview of my route along with some of the important strategies that I use to save time. At the end of the video, I'm also going to dedicate some time to review zones which I tested but did not find to be efficient enough to include in the run, along with a few miscellaneous tips and tricks that I think some people might find useful. Really quick, before I dive into the run itself, I want to give an overview of my setup for the run, along with a few disclaimers. For starters, this run was done on Horde as a Vulpera hunter. For the most part, you do not need to be either a Vulpera or a hunter in order to efficiently utilize this route, but I will explain where in the run my race and class choice help to shave off my time. That said, this guide does go over certain zones which are exclusive to the Horde, and I unfortunately do not play Alliance enough to construct a detailed route for them. However, I will include some notes at the end of the video with suggestions on potential zone substitutions based on things that I remember being efficient in the past. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the run itself. The first part of the run is something that everybody will find very familiar. You're going to want to complete the Warlords of Draenor intro. Now, there's been some debate recently as to whether or not it's efficient to complete the intro or just simply bypass it in order to get to Frostfire Ridge or Shadowmoon Valley. However, I've tested the WoD Intro extensively, and trust me, it's extremely efficient. In fact, I'd go so far as to call it the most efficient questline in the entire game currently, even more so than all of the other zones I'm going to cover in this video. It only takes me about 23 minutes to complete the entire thing on average, and I usually get about 5 levels, so if you skip it, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. I mean, honestly, aside from this one little glider skip that I'm showing here, you don't really have any major speed things for the WoD Intro. It's just a really good zone. Even at a very relaxed pace, you're going to find that the quests are very densely packed, and since flying is disabled anyway, it ends up taking roughly the same amount of time to complete no matter what level you are. Once you finish the intro, stick around in Frostfire or Shadowmoon, depending on your faction, just long enough to set up your garrison and obtain your Garrison Hearthstone. The moment you do this, use your regular Hearthstone and return to your faction's main city. This is the point where my run starts to differ greatly from most leveling guides out there. Tons of people are puppeting the idea that simply questing through Warlords and doing nothing else is the fastest way to level, but this is not true at all. After returning to Orgrimmar, I take the Undercity portal, which is located on top of the Zeppelin Tower. From here, I exit through the sewers and I go straight to Silverpine Forest, or not straight to Silverpine Forest. I like to take a short detour to the left because there's a rare mob, Hibernus the Sleeper, which spawns nearby. And this leads me into a major theme for this route, which is the integration of rare mobs into the routing itself. So, the revamped classic zones are absolutely littered with rare mobs, and each one gives experience that's roughly equivalent to 2 Draenor treasures. While there are some rares in faraway or in hard-to-reach locations, many of them are actually really close to regular questing areas, so it's quite easy to route them in. Also, since I know that many people are already thinking this, I want to quickly establish that rare mobs are absolutely not required to make this route efficient. I've tested all of the classic revamp zones used in this route, both with and without rare mob kills. And even with 0 rare mob kills, they end up being far more efficient than most Warlords of Draenor zones. Rare mobs in classic revamp zones are surprisingly easy to find if you know where to look, so they're ultimately just a nice addition to an already efficient route. Once you arrive in Silverpine, keep an eye out for the rare bat Kree, which is flying in the air just north of Forsaken High Command. Afterwards, simply continue on towards the town in order to begin the questline. Right at the start, you're presented with a great opportunity to relax and clean out your bags as you wait for Garrosh to tell Sylvanas to watch your clever mouth. Once this little cutscene is over, head down to the beach and kill beasts in Worgen. It's important that you slowly move south along the coast as you want to end close to the Decrepit Fields subzone. This area has a cluster of 3 rares, Gorfang, which can be found in multiple locations along the coastline, Nightlash, who wanders around the Decrepit Fields area, and Nath, who can be found underneath a bridge along the main road. After checking all of these rare mobs, head back to the Forsaken High Command and continue the questline normally until it sends you over to the Forsaken Rearguard. While running there, take a slight detour to check for the rare mob Bulgath the Mad Hunter. For the most part, the Forsaken Rearguard quests are relatively straightforward, and while a rare mob named Krethis the Shadow Spinner does spawn nearby, it's right out in the open and therefore it's usually not alive. Eventually, you're going to get sent to the Sepulchre, and this gives you a large amount of quests to complete. Start by heading south to Olson's Farthing and complete all of the quest objectives there. There's also a rare mob, Berard the Mooncrazed, which spawns in a tent towards the western edge of the subzone. Continue on to Deep Ellum Mine, but take a slight detour up the mountains when you finish the quest here. There's a rare named Lost Gilnean War Dog in a secluded but relatively easy to access area. From here you can Goblin Glider, or jump, off the cliff in order to reach the area below. You might find a rare mob named Fenwick Thatros on the nearby dock, but since he's right out in the open, he tends to be killed often. The rest of your quest objectives should be in this area, so simply complete them and head back to the Sepulchre to do a large turn-in. At some point around now in the questing experience, you'll hit level 20. For me, this usually occurs right before leaving Forsaken High Command, but it could be delayed up until when you reach the Sepulchre if you're missing some experience. Riding speed increases and enabling war mode are things that will save you massive amounts of time in the long run, so I highly recommend dropping whatever you're doing and heading back to Orgrimmar when you reach levels 20, 30, and 40. Additionally, I have a few time-saving suggestions that you can utilize in order to speed this process up. For starters, if you're a Volpera, you can set a camp anywhere in the world, hearth to Orgrimmar, learn your riding skill, and then immediately teleport back to where you were. This is a massive time save, and it's the primary reason that I played as a Volpera in my world record run. Additionally, monks and mages can speed up the process through creative usage of their teleport abilities. So if you set your Hearthstone to a nearby location, you can use Zen Pilgrimage or Portals, respectively, to return to your main city and learn your riding. From there, just teleport back to the place where you set your Hearthstone and continue questing. So, returning back to the Silverpine quests. You're going to be sent into Gilneas around this time. This part is relatively straightforward, and unfortunately there's no rare mobs in the entire zone of Gilneas, but it is worth noting that while doing the first set of quests, you should always kill Korok the Colossus, as he drops an item which starts a quest. Once you return to Silverpine, you'll be sent to Ambermill. When exiting the Forsaken Front, head north until you reach a small camp. When you begin to get close, you should hit an invisible phase trigger, and if you're lucky, you'll encounter a rare named Thule Ravenclaw. Continue along with the Ambermill quests as normal, but keep an eye out for Aquarius the Unbound, a rare that patrols around the area. After this, you'll be sent back into the Sepulchre, and a portal will take you to Dalaran Crater in Hillsbrad Foothills. Make sure that you kill the elemental mobs nearby, as they drop items which begin a quest. Additionally, keep an eye out for Indigos. He's a blue dragon that spawns along the edge of the crater. From here, the route continues relatively normally until you meet up with Godfrey. Before doing his set of quests, just head a little bit up the path towards Shadowfang Keep until you pass an invisible phase barrier. If you're lucky, you'll find two rare mobs here, Aphritis, a gargoyle perched on a nearby pillar, and Corpse Feeder, which should be slightly behind you in the direction of the Forsaken Front. I was unfortunately unable to get any footage of Corpse Feeder, but I recommend using a ranged attack to draw him towards you because you might accidentally phase back into the Forsaken Front if you get too close. After you check these two rare mobs, the questline mostly continues normally. The only thing worth noting for the rest of Silverpine is that while killing the dwarf NPCs, you should make sure to kill one of the nearby crocodiles, as they drop an item which starts a quest. Before moving on into Hillsbrad, I want to briefly mention that there's another extremely difficult to find rare in Silverpine, the Lost Son of Arugel. He has a massive patrol range that covers most of Silverpine Forest, so he's basically impossible to route in. If you find him, just consider yourself very, very lucky. So, as mentioned previously, the next zone in the route is Hillsbrad Foothills, and it's just as efficient as Silverpine Forest. The most interesting thing about this zone is the absolutely massive number of rares it has, 23, if you don't include Indigos. While there are a few which are so far off the grid that they aren't worth routing in, I've managed to put together a route which hits 21 of the 23 with extremely minimal downtime. Since this is an incredibly large number of rares, I think it'll be a bit faster if I just go over all of them now, along with their locations. So, following is a list of all of the 21 rares in the route, listed in the order that you'll potentially encounter them. Scargill, a murloc which spawns along the southwest coast. Carsonak, a crab along the coast below South Shore. Creepthes, a spider to the west of South Shore. Little Bjorn, a bear to the south of Azurlode Mines. Miasmus, a spider deep inside Azurlode Mine. The Dark Prowler, a cat to the west of the Sludge Fields. Elitis, a bird circling a tower in South Shore, Lady Zephyrus, a naga along the southeast coast, Robark, a knoll south of East Point Tower, Dustwing, a moth flying above Purgation Isle, Cordix, a worm swimming in a lake south of Terran Mill, Cranky Benji, a turtle that patrols along the river in the middle of the zone, Big Samris, a bear that sits on a hill west of Durnhold Keep, Magarak, an elemental near Strombrad, Gravis Slipknot, a human in Strombrad, Jimmy the Bleeder, a human on a cliff west of Terran Mill, Scowl, a yeti south of Ruins of Alterac, Araga, a cat on a cliff to the east of the Sludge Fields, Weevil, a beetle inside a cave below the cliff Araga is on, Lopex, a fox north of Durnhold Keep, Tomra Stormpike, a ghost dwarf inside of Dungarok. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's continue with the route. So, you start at South Point Gate, complete the quest there, and head to Azurlode Mine, completing the quest with the infested bears as you go. Pick up all of the quests at Azurlode Mine and travel east along the coastline. This is where you might encounter Scargill. Make sure to kill a mob named Muckgill in this area, as he drops an item that starts a quest. Once you finish these quests, continue east until you reach Carsonax. From here, backtrack towards Azurlode Mine, hitting the locations of Creepthas and Little Bjorn in that order. Hand in all of your quests and head inside Azurlode Mine, capturing humans as you go. Pick up the quest to escort Dumbass outside of Azurlode Mine, and yes, that is his actual name. While you're in the mines, check for miasmas. After finishing all of the quests here, go north to the Sludge Fields. Do all of the quests here. The only thing worth really noting is that saving the humans is faster than killing them, and after you finish the quest to kill Warden Stillwater, take a slight detour to the west and check for the Dark Prowler. Continue onwards towards South Shore and check for Elitis as you arrive. Complete all the quests here and be sure to kill the slimes near the docks as they begin a quest once you attack them. Once you finish the slime quest, talk to Orcus, and after accepting his quest to heal Kasha, continue east along the coastline to the Naga area. This is where you might find Lady Zephyrus. Kill a Naga here to get an item that gives a quest, and then kill 15 more Naga to complete said quest. Head north to the Field of Gnolls and complete Orcus's quest, along with the kill quest that you'll get from fighting the Gnolls here. This is where you might find Robark. Return to South Shore and finish all of your quests here. Make sure that you hand in all of your other quests before talking to Orcus, as he will immediately teleport you to Purgation Isle if you talk to him. Once you're finished, talk to him and complete the quest there. This is where you might find Dustwing. After finishing the quests on Purgation Isle, you'll be placed on a flight to Terran Mill. Once there, grab all of the quests available and head south. You're taking a detour to check for multiple rares. First, check the pond for Cordix, and then run along the river to check for Cranky Benji. Run up the hill and check for Big Samris. Next, turn in the quests at Frostwolf Camp, north of Terran Mill. When it tells you to return to the town, head north instead. Check for Magarak and Gravis Slipknot, and then take the flight point from Strombrad back to Terran Mill. Make sure you have all of the quests at this point, the first of which should be to place the pocket nukes and to use a Banshee mirror on Alliance spies. Head north and complete the quests along the multiple hills in northern Hillsbrad, starting with Sofera's Naze. While there, check for Jimmy the Bleeder on Kuran's Dagger, another hill in the area, Scowl, south of the ruins of Alterac, and Araga in the headland. Once you planted the last pocket nuke on Gavin's Naze, head south and complete all of the remaining quests. Yetimus can be extremely difficult to solo if you don't have a lot of self-healing or a pet tank, so it might be worth asking in general chat if people want to group up for him. While inside the Yeti Cave, you might encounter Weevil. Once you complete all of these quests, turn them in at Terran Mill, and then continue to East Point Tower. After picking up all the quests in East Point Tower, start by killing the Owlkin while you slowly move along the western side of Durnhold Keep. Make your way up to Lopex's spawn location, and then complete all of the quests in the Durnhold Challenge quest chain. Like Yetimus, this can be very difficult to solo for some classes, so I recommend looking for a group in general. After you finish this, the route takes an interesting turn, and I suggest flying over Thoradin's Wall and into Arathi Highlands. You won't complete any quests here, but there's a very close set of 4 rares that you want to check. Zorn is a spider right along the northernmost part of Thoradin's Wall. Kill him, and then head to Northfold Manor. 2 rares spawn here. A dog, Snuffles, and a human, Singer. After checking their locations, check for Rule 1 Stone and Ogre at the Circle of West Binding. Finally, continue south, flying over Thoradin's Wall and ending up in Dungarok, once again back in Hillsbrad Foothills. Complete all of the quests here and check for the final rare, Tamra Stormpike. Once you finish this subzone, head back to East Point Tower, hand in all of your quests, and use your Garrison Hearthstone because you're going back into Warlords of Draenor. From here, the run mostly follows a standard route. You'll want to make a beeline straight towards Gorgrond, only stopping in Frostfire to complete the Grimfrost Hill bonus objective along with the 2 nearby quests. Complete the questline in Gorgrond up until you unlock Beastwatch, and make sure you choose the Gladiator Sanctum, as it is far more efficient. Head north to Affliction Ridge and complete all of the quests there. You're going to want to use your Champion's Honor ability once you've rounded up a lot of enemies, as it is a chance to grant you certain quest items if you kill mobs while it's active. Your first usage will be here, in Affliction Ridge, and you're aiming to get a combination of Botanai Bloom, Goron Tooth, Grondling Scale, Orcthorn, or Gronai. Ideally, you should get at least 3 of the 5 that I just listed. Afterwards, head into Stonemaul Arena and complete all of the quests there. When you finish this quest chain, you'll begin the Rexxar questline, and your Champion's Honor ability should be back up. While doing his quest to get Basilisk Meat and Steam Fury Water, you'll want to round up a bunch of these mobs and pop Champion's Honor in order to get the Basilisk Scale and Elemental Crystal quest item. The route after here is pretty straightforward. Just continue along the Rexxar questline and use your next Champion's Honor while fighting the Ogron in order to get the Ogron Horn quest item. Once you finish Rexxar's quest to retrieve the Heart of the Magdaron, you have a few options. Some people like doing the questline at Dionor's Demise, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not it is efficient. Personally, I complete the Valley of Destruction bonus objective, and then I head south, where I complete the Razorbloom bonus objective. This is where you'll want to use your next Champion's Honor, ideally to get the Wasp Stinger and Ravager Claw items. If you weren't able to get the Orcthorn or Botanai Bloom earlier, this is also a good spot to get them. Next, I fly east and complete the Mistcreep Mire bonus objective, as well as the entire Crimson Fen questline, as it's very fast. At this point, I head back to Beastwatch in order to do one massive quest turn-in, before flying south again in order to do the Ruins of the First Bastion and Tailthrasher Basin bonus objectives, in that order. At this point, I leave Gorgrond and fly south to Talador. While I don't recommend doing the rest of the Gorgrond bonus objectives since the nerf gutted them pretty hard, they aren't incredibly inefficient and they're still relatively easy, so it's an option. As for Talador, I don't really spend very long there. I mostly pass through here just to reach Spires of Arak, but that being said, I do think it's worth it to complete at least the Aruna's Desolation bonus objective on your way, since it's very fast and has multiple nearby treasures. Zorkra's Fall is also a good option, because it's just above Spires and it's very short. Once you're in Spires itself, the route becomes mostly straightforward again. Continue along the questline and only stop after completing Skedis in order to learn archaeology from Rashad. At this point, double back to grab the treasures you missed and then continue. Once you reach Axfall, construct the Hearthfire Tavern, as it gives you a flat 20% experience bonus while in Spires of Arak. Don't forget to run inside of the inn to grab the 3 wanted quests. At this point, I recommend ignoring the Admiral Taylor's Garrison questline and just completing the quest to the north of Vale Tarok until you reach Vale Across, also known as the Arakoa town that got cut in half with a giant laser beam. These quests from here onward are very, very, very slow, so I recommend immediately flying east to Talon Watch and doing the entire questline there. Talon Watch has relatively good quest density, and it has a lot of nearby treasure locations. Once the questline tells you to return to Vale Tarok, I suggest going there, handing in everything, and then immediately flying southeast. You'll want to make your way down towards Pinch Whistle Gearworks, but it's important to grab nearly every treasure you encounter on your way there. Most importantly, make sure that you pick up and use every offering of the Raven Mother treasure, as it grants you bonus rested experience. Once you arrive in Pinch Whistle Gearworks, complete the entire questline, as it has relatively good quest density. Finally, complete the Bloodmane Pridelands bonus objective and kill Spineslicer and Kehoe the Savage for the wanted quests. While flying back up north towards Axfall, take a short detour and pick up all of the treasures in Admiral Taylor's garrison. Once you've turned in all of your remaining quests, use your regular Hearthstone and return to Orgrimmar. Around this point in the route, you should be nearing level 50. In order to close the thing out, I chose to do Stone Talon Mountains. Since you all have mastered riding by now, it shouldn't take you too long to just fly west of Orgrimmar and head towards Stone Talon. Rather than heading straight there, however, you'll be flying towards Silverwind Refuge in Ashenvale. Once you get there, pick up the quest, We're Here to Do One Thing, Maybe Two, which allows you to begin the Stone Talon Mountains questline. Once you pick it up, simply fly to the turning point and begin the questline. For the most part, Stone Talon is a very straightforward zone. You're going to be aiming to hit 50 at some point along this questline, so it's hard to say exactly how far into it you'll get. Ideally though, you'll want to finish before reaching the end of the Sludgeworks subzone, because things start to get really inefficient from that point onward. However, if you follow this guide, that really shouldn't be an issue. Stone Talon also has quite a few rares, but unlike the other zones, they're kind of difficult to route in. Most of the rares are either directly in the middle of a quest area, so they're usually dead, or they're so far off the route that it's just difficult to justify including them. Just to be safe, I've documented the locations of most of the rare mobs, so I'll read them off in a list format, just like I did with Hillsbrad. Feel free to route these in wherever you think it's necessary. For starters, Taskmaster Whipfang is a gnoll that's found on the scaffolding area above the lake in Windshear Crag. Qual is an owl found by the Goblin Hut south of Windshear Hold. Iris the Widow is a spider found far in the back of Webwinder Vale. Sparkwing is a wind serpent in the caves west of Malacca Jin. Kepri is a beetle hiding underneath a platform in the unearthed grounds quarry. Pharos is a lion to the east of Malacca Jin. Sorrowing is a wyvern west of the Sludgeworks. Volux is a wasp flying high above the Thaldera Grove. Tenok is a raptor in a cave just east of the Thaldera Grove. Dustflight the Cowardly is a tall strider that sits on a path north of Sunrock Retreat. Array is a vulture that flies around a tree south of Sunrock Retreat, but unfortunately I have no footage of him. Nautazar is a fairy dragon that flies above a lake in the middle of the Highborn Ghost area south of Sunrock Retreat. Sister Riven is a harpy in the small forested area east of the Charred Vale. Brother Ravenoak is a night elf near a moonwell in Stone Talon Peak. That should cover everything for the 10 to 50 route itself, so if that's all you came here for, I really appreciate you watching and I hope this helped you. That said, at the start of the video, I promised to cover additional information based on my testing for various different zones, as well as my estimate for a similar alliance route, so I'm going to be covering that from here on out. Ever since the pre-patch launched, I've been testing a lot of different zones, mostly on Horde, in order to figure out what the most optimal route is. While many zones ended up being a complete waste of time, some of them were actually very close to making the cut, so I want to go over them and explain why I decided not to go with them in the end. I'm going to start by talking about Western Plaguelands, because I did end up running it in my world record speedrun. Now, just to be clear, this wasn't because I thought it would be faster, but rather because Blizzard's servers decided to have a meltdown the moment I set foot in Gorgrond. What the hell? This is unplayable.
I have many wares.
Okay, While it was unfortunate that I was unable to use my initial route for my actual speedrun, I did find Western Plaguelands to be surprisingly fast. Most of the hubs had relatively good quest density, and as long as you run it once you have master riding, the travel time isn't terrible. While I won't go over all of the rare mobs in detail, it does have quite a few that can be easily routed in. I'll link a website in the video description, and that has a list of every single rare and every single zone in the game, so it's a good way to check if you're curious about trying Western Plaguelands. Overall, I think that Western Plaguelands is just slightly not efficient enough to be worth routing in normally, but if you end up being forced to leave WoD because of server issues, I'd recommend doing this zone instead. The only other zone that I'll talk about in a bit more detail is Eastern Plaguelands, as it was one that a lot of my friends suggested that I try out. I do remember running this before the leveling changes every now and then, and I recall that it was pretty fast. However, after testing the entire thing and comparing it to other zones, it just doesn't hold up. It's a fun zone to quest through, and it has multiple subzones with relatively good quest density, but there's just far too much forced downtime or travel time to make it efficient. One interesting thing about Eastern Plaguelands is that the questline in Tyr's Hand might possibly be the most efficient set of quests in the entire game, as it took me about 5 minutes and it gave me an entire level. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that you're unable to access this questline until you're about 2/3 of the way through the zone, so it's just not practical to route it in. That said, if you're looking to have a more relaxed questing experience and you're willing to sacrifice a bit of efficiency for it, Eastern Plaguelands is a solid option. Now, I want to quickly go over a list of different zones or expansions that I tested personally or had some friends test for me. Since there's obviously a lot to cover, I'm going to quickly list them off, along with a short explanation for why I don't think that they're efficient. Frostfire Ridge is not a terrible zone, but it has far too much downtime and travel time for it to be able to compete with all of the other options. Talador has certain sections which make it quite efficient, but other parts of the run are just extremely long, so when you average out the time it takes, the zone's just not worth running. Any zone in Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King is just not efficient at all. I know that some people love these expansions, but the zones just have not aged well. For endgame Cataclysm zones, Mist of Pandaria, and Legion, there are certain subzones which are very efficient. That said, these seem to be too few and far between to be worth routing in. It's also worth noting that while Mop Treasures gave fantastic experience before, they appear to have been nerfed into oblivion, so now they're not efficient at all. Battle for Azeroth zones just don't seem to be very efficient compared to everything else. Tragic, as I know everybody just couldn't wait to level their pre-patch characters through this wonderful expansion. Azshara is another zone that I tested quite heavily, and it's questionably efficient. Some parts of it are actually quite fast, but a lot of the questline is slowed down by roleplay and travel time. If anything, the first 20 or so minutes of the zone might be run in the future. Ashenvale, Winterspring, Fellwood, Northern Barrens, Southern Barrens, Fairless, Dustwalla Marsh, Thousand Needles, Tenaris, and Arathi Highlands are all zones that I asked my friends to test for me. They all reported back that these zones did not feel efficient, so I did not bother testing them. While I did test Burning Steppes, Searing Gorge, and the Badlands a little bit, I didn't really feel that they were efficient. But that said, I don't have much practice with these zones, so it is possible that my times could have been significantly faster if I had more knowledge. I still don't believe that this would make them efficient enough to be worth routing in, but I do think this is worth noting. Now I want to talk briefly about Alliance zones and what I believe an efficient 10 to 50 route might look like for them. For everything involving WoD zones, I recommend following my guide to the letter. The WoD Intro, Gorgrond, and Spires are still very efficient for Alliance, and the only thing that you'll find different is a few locations or names that I mention. Also, while I believe Shadowmoon Valley is slightly faster than Frostfire Ridge, I still do not think it is worth running. It's possible that the Gul'dan questline could be efficient, as it's very close to the Alliance Garrison, whereas the Horde have to take a hike all the way up to Northern Frostfire, but I'd recommend following the same general idea that I did, and replacing levels 15 to 35 with Cata Revamp zones, and potentially even ending the run with one after you finish Spires. I can't personally speak to zone efficiency after the pre-patch, but I do recall that Red Ridge Mountains, Loch Modan, Duskwood, Wetlands, Western Plaguelands, and Stone Talon Mountains were all very fast when I did them on Alliance over the years. I'd recommend testing out all of these zones and finding a route that you're personally comfortable with. And with that, the guide's complete! I really hope that you were able to find this useful, as I've been putting in a ton of work over the past week to try and optimize the leveling route for Horde especially. I really enjoy the work that I've been able to do on the Covenant spreadsheet over the last few months, so I figured this would be another fun way to test some things out while also helping the community. Also, I know this run isn't perfect, but I'm always looking for ways to improve it. I've put a link to a Google Doc with a shorter written guide in the video description, and any further routing changes that I make will be documented on there. Lastly, my Discord tag is Haraldin number 2316, and my battle tag is Haraldin number 11303. If you have any feedback on the video or the leveling route, I would love to hear from you. Alright, that's it. Later, folks.